Southwestern family of companies welcomes you to the Action Catalyst. With each episode, our diverse and amazingly accomplished guests share their insights and inspirations to help us ignite our own. So let's invest attention, together, to breathe, to reflect, and refocus, and decisively defeat that voice that we call Mr. Mediocrity. Then let's enjoy moving forward to make a positive difference in our world.
You are about to hear from the man who branded the Super Bowl, Jim Steeg, in his 26 seasons in charge of the NFL Special Events Department, specifically the Super Bowl, changed the whole dynamics of this event from a football game to a 4-day extravaganza. And Steeg is considered to basically be the individual who grew the Super Bowl into what is today's probably the greatest one-day sporting event in the world. He handled everything. I am talking site selection, the stadium practice site preparation, the build-out, pregame, halftime shows, the national anthem performers, the fan accommodations, corporate hospitality, the broadcasting of the TV, telecom, transportation, security, logo design, decorations, signage. I mean, everything you can think of related to the Super Bowl ultimately fell under this man's purview. And get this is pretty amazing. When he first started, the Super Bowl did $5 million. That's what the event generated the first year. And when he was done, it produced over $250 million. So here to talk to us about Super Bowl branding, please welcome Jim Steeg. So Jim, what was it like in the early days? Can you speak to that for us just a little bit?
Well, first Super Bowl I went to was Super Bowl 10 when I had just started to work for the Dolphins, and I sat in the corner of the end zone in the upper deck, and it was the biggest game in professional football at that point in time. It probably wasn't even as big as things that we had in Miami, the Orange Bowl or the Rose Bowl or things like that. It was a football game that was isolated. It was a championship game. There were some things that were added to it. The halftime shows were there. We were probably competing with the halftime show, trying to get as good as the Orange Bowl halftime show in those days. But it was all about, the game. So the focus was on making sure it was the best possible experience. Now, was the intent and the planning of Pete Rozelle, then the commissioner and the one who was involved, certainly when it started back in 1967, that he wanted it to make it something that was kind of melded the entertainment business together with the sports business. So we'd spent a lot of times in the first 13 years going back and forth between Miami and Los Angeles. Miami, you could say, is New York South. Los Angeles is Los Angeles. So, whether it's thinking of the Jackie Gleason show or whatever you had in LA. And so there was a lot of us, but it was a football game and you were trying to make it the biggest football game there was. It really developed from them through a variety. I'd like to say they were all well thought out, measured plans. The thing that made the game so great and part of what changed it was going from Miami to Los Angeles, New Orleans thrown in there. You were in the same places. And once we started going to Tampa and Detroit and San Diego and, Houston and run down the list, each one of those brought something new to the equation that you could make the game even better and grow the game. And that's part of what it was all about.
So what did you do with that vision? What were some of the initial steps that you took?
Well, like I say, some of them are by chance and some were thought out. But I think the first big change we had from an entertainment standpoint was when we went to Detroit and we talked about the national anthem the previous year had been sung by Helen O'Connell. I'm sure it's on your hit parade. I'm not sure how many people remember Helen O'Connell. I went to Pete and we said, well, we're going to Detroit. Let's step it up a little bit. Let's try something. There's only one person that could sing the anthem of Detroit, and it was Diana Ross. And his response to me was, yeah, go ahead, kid, give it a shot. He had no chance. Went and called on her, and absolutely she did it. That evolved the anthem now from being, just somebody, to now all of a sudden being a star, a celebrity of major note that's out there, the Billy Joels and Barry Manilow's and, run down the list of those people that were chart toppers. But I think that shows the change in how that took place. Then our pregame shows we left the halftime show to be entertainment. The pregame shows were kind of about the local community, but had we put bands in those, the local marching band, when we were in Tampa in '84, we had Florida and Florida State bands. get together for the first time. Well, we end up in 85, we're at Stanford. And the one thing we knew we couldn't do is have the Stanford band be involved in the game. Then if we went across the street and got Cal, that would be heresy. So we created a pregame show out of that. And then the halftime show evolved because they weren't our partners at the time, but Fox ambushed us in 1992 with a show they called In Living Color, which went live during the halftime show and went right opposite us, trying to steal part of that audience. And we sat down the next year saying, well, we can't let this happen again. And so we went after what we thought was the biggest name in entertainment at the time, which was Michael Jackson. So that was the beginning of the change in the halftime show. So some of it happens by chance. Some of it happens by being well thought out there to try to bring all that together. And then we become a destination that everybody feels that they've got to be because it's now a 3 or 4 day stay that people come down. I can't tell you the number of people that go to the Super Bowl and don't go to the game.
Basically, you found a way to raise the profile. You brought in these people. So when you're approaching like Michael Jackson and Diana Ross, did you have the money for that? Because that's before the Super Bowl was what it is now.
No, they did it for free. We paid their production costs or things like that. But the major thing we got across to them, and it bred upon itself, was you start talking about the exposure. I mean, Sandy Gallen, who was Michael Jackson's manager, couldn't tell you if a football was pumped or stuffed, no idea what we were talking about. And so you go there and that you get this false sense when you're dealing with the Super Bowl and the NFL is that everybody knows about the Super Bowl and everybody knows about the NFL. And then you find out that there are a number of people that don't know. And that was the case we had with Sandy Gallen and with Michael Jackson. They didn't know what it was. So like any kind of business approach, you're selling yourself with something and you go in and you make a presentation, say, let me tell you what this is. Let me tell you what the TV ratings are. Let me tell you what the type of crowd it is. Let me tell you who's in the crowd. Let me tell you what this is going to be broadcast, internationally. And really, in the case of Michael, that was the thing that made it work, was when we told them, well, this is going to be broadcast in 180 different countries live. And you could see his eyes light up and say, you mean this is going to be broadcast in places I'll never give a concert? And we went, absolutely. And that was kind of the thing that put it over the edge with him. But it's like all those things, all these people that you're talking to get them involved. And I saw this so many times with entertainers that they just think, I've played stadiums, I've played whatever it is. This is nothing. And you get them out there and they get in the middle of the field and they start doing it, go, this is a little bit different than what I've ever done before. I think now the way it's evolved, people want to be a part of it because they realize that is a very, very special moment in their careers. I look at McCartney as an example, the no bigger star probably than there is. Him wanting to be involved in the Super Bowl, him wanting to do the halftime show because he knew, it was something that hadn't been done in his career, but he wanted the experience of it. But even a guy like that comes out there and he's got a little bit of the jitters as he's getting ready to go out. One of the things that made the Super Bowl stand out in a lot of ways was where it sat in the calendar year. It fit perfectly into the kind of the corporate environment. It was at the end of the calendar year, or it was the end of the fourth quarter, or whatever that was. So it gave the perfect opportunity for the incentive type programs. Best salesman for Ford Motor Company gets to go to the Super Bowl. And, they used to bring, back in the 1970s, early 1980s, they bring 1,700, dealers in, and we sold that number of tickets, or Chrysler bought 700 in, that type of thing. And so it became a corporate happening where people were at that got rewarded. They were the best of their company. They were coming and being part of it. And then we started to really cultivate the corporate community. I won't say we were the first, but we were darn close to it to really start the idea of having the corporate hospitality village outside the stadium, where on game day, you're not just coming in for a 4-hour experience in a game, but you're there for the 3 hours before and an hour after. So now it's an 8-hour experience, and they're doing their own entertaining in that. Name entertainers or name celebrities in there that are part of that. So they brought things to the game that we didn't necessarily have to bring. Now, we had our own tailgate party, which sounded like a nice little thing, but it was an intimate affair for about 10,000 people. but it still left 6/7 of the crowd on the outside looking in. So I think that what you tried to do with a lot of these things, and part of our plan was to get other people to bring things to us that we didn't have the wherewithal or the money to be able to pull off initially. So we had a golf tournament that was sponsored by Warner Lambert forever and ever. And then after a while, we took it over. They had set the seeds and they didn't want to do it for 1 year. And then we took it over. And then it became something that's generating, a ton of money off of that. Or the Taste of the NFL, which is a event that was originally put on through the host committee in Minnesota and now has been held for 25 years at the Super Bowl, and it's generated probably $1 million a year for feeding the homeless. But it also created its own event, brought in its own celebrities, that type of thing. So you're really trying to get them to feel like they're part of it, and you sanction them, for a better word, which in the way we did it meant that you still had to abide by not ambushing our sponsors, but it grew the event and they helped grow it also. So
how does the Super Bowl make money, and what were the different revenue streams that you developed?
Well, I think the revenues, they're very diverse. They're simple at the beginning. First of all, it's ticket sales. I hate to say ticket prices in 79 were $20 a ticket, a little bit different. Your control, we took control over those things that we thought we helped generate around the stadium. The concessions, the merchandise, the parking, things like that we could drive revenue, not just by us taking control over them, but making the product line better. So if you're dealing with an Aramark or a Centerplate or whoever that's doing your concessions, they're bringing in the best of their people and their business that they've got to do. So you develop products that you're going to have that may be higher price, but they're also higher quality. From a merchandise standpoint, it's not just selling like it was 30 years ago, pennants and hats and T-shirts, right? Now you're really trying to develop product lines, things you can take on consignment that are $150, satin jackets or something like that. And, you look back, the whole product line, for example, of winners merchandise started with something we did at the Super Bowl in Tampa in '84. Nobody had ever done winners merchandise. Now you can't get away from any championship without them throwing a hat on somebody. So trying to develop that, trying to make also the experience better. So we did a lot of things for the fans that were coming that would get them voluntarily spend money rather than pulling out of their pocket. So at the concession stand, and I know this is hard to think of these days, but you put sound and television sets in the concession stand. So when they got up to go to the concession stand, it's not...
You don't miss the game.
Yeah. I know what the war is now. Or you did that, you put sound in the bathrooms. There's nothing worse than deciding you got to go to the bathroom and hearing the war going, oh my God, what just happened? I think that those things we're trying to get it out of. Television, obviously, is part of that. But I guess going back to merchandise, the product line also changed from what you could do and where you could sell it. It wasn't just something that was at the game, or it's the fact that you're throwing a Super Bowl party and you're not just worried about getting the guacamole and the chips, but can you get the Super Bowl napkins or the, whatever it is to do that party. So you really try to think about how people do it. Like I said, television was important, and obviously the way each one of the networks take over. I mean, we joked when Fox first took over, we thought that the pregame show probably started in September. You got a 5 or 6 hour pregame show. The advertising rates have gone crazy since that. I guess Apple was the first company to ever do a commercial solely designed for the Super Bowl way back in 1984. So, I mean, now everybody uses that to unveil their new commercials. Now you've even got companies that it's 100% or advertising. So television was part of it, merchandising, concessions, tickets, making experiences. We decided that we didn't want to look greedy. That was really important to us, that people would always think of the NFL, and always do think of the NFL, is chasing the almighty buck. I'm not saying that we don't, but we took the NFL experience, which was a creation. Unfortunately, it came out of a harebrained idea I had because I collect baseball and football cards. And when that was hit its craze in the late 80s, early 90s, I decided, well, let's do a card show at the Super Bowl. Everybody thought, well, why would you do that? And I said, well, what more people you got to run around with disposable money than that? The people that are going there, and who would buy a 52 Mantle card than somebody that would shell out cash that was at the Super Bowl, that type of stuff. So we did that. And we did it the first time in New Orleans and had 40,000 people go. That was more than the National Card Show did. So the next year we said, well, let's expand upon this. Why don't we create an experience that all, can take care of people on game day, give them something to do if they're not going to one of the corporate parties or the NFL tailgate parties. Let's create something around that, but let's kind of create an experience for them. And we called it NFL Town Square at the time. And it was designed like a shopping mall. It had a movie theater in the middle, obviously NFL films stuff. One end was a merchandise store. The other end was the card show. We filled in everything in between with all the knick-knack type stuff going on. Our budget for the thing was like $275,000, and we drew 73,000 people to it. And the next year, we rebranded it the NFL Experience. And at that point in time, it's become a staple by every event, I think, that's out there. I'm not even sure you can go to a regular baseball game or football game without having something. It's a fan experience element to it. You certainly can't go to the Final Four or those type of events, NBA All-Star Game, NHL All-Star Game, without that being there.
It's fascinating. You guys were so far ahead of your time.
Well, thank you. I mean, I think the key to always look at this is two parts of this three parts. The people that are coming to the game are coming to the game. You want to give them, and probably 80% of the people that are coming to the game, it's a once in a lifetime moment. And so you want them to walk away. As Roselle used to say, I can't guarantee you that this game is going to be 20-19 decided by a last minute missed field goal. In all likelihood, there'll be some games that are 55-9. It really made me think of how do you make sure you do that for everybody coming there. And what they see out of their prism is probably different than what somebody else sees out of their prism. The goal always was to get three people sitting in coach on the way back from the game. And one of them said, "I was the greatest experience I had. I sat on the 50-yard line and I saw blah, 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 blah." And the guys, what the hell are you talking about? That was a great experience I had. I got to go to this over here. I went to this event. I went to that event. I sat in the corner of the end zone. The other guy says, what are you talking about? I sat in the bar, at the Fountain Blue Hotel and watched the game with a whole bunch of people. It was the greatest experience of my life. So you don't know what it is that colors anybody's experience, and what you want is when they leave to be able to talk about it. And I think the other part that really is important is you come into a community and you are one of the biggest businesses in that community for that year. And you need to do everything that you have to do there. And the NFL Experience gave us that opportunity. Now it draws 200,000 people to the event. I mean, it's crazy. It's obviously more than what you got coming into town. So it's a chance for all the local people to experience and touch the Super Bowl if they can't go to the game. And that's going to be their memory of what's going to come with it. So I think all those things are part of what's there. And then you talked about the charitable side of it. That was really a key to it. We took the gate proceeds from the NFL Experience and said, okay, we're going to pay for this with sponsorship. Everything going to gate is going to go back into a charity. And what we did was we established a thing called NFL Youth Education Town, which was basically we build a bricks and mortar place in every city for kids to have as an adjunct, for recreation and also education. So you're really trying to make the feel and the reach of this thing so much more than just, the one guy sitting at the 50-yard line.
Right.
It's got to be some kid that's never going to get to go to the game, but he got to go to the NFL Experience, and there was Troy Aikman signing an autograph for him, something he'll always remember. Or it's a youth clinic being held where Warren Moon is teaching him how to throw a football, that type of stuff. So it's really trying to, he talked about it, it's extending the brand. And I think the one thing I learned is that you don't have to pull money out of people. You often get it given to you if you do the right thing. I mean, it's amazing how sponsors come to you, want to sponsor things if they see it being done in the right way.
Right. That's amazing. Well, Jim, it's such a cool and nostalgic experience to just hear from you, just telling the stories.
I have a passion for this. Obviously, I lived it. There's no way you can get away from it. I used to try to hide it when my kids were growing up. They always from the town was, well, there's somebody here that works for the NFL in our town. I go, I wonder who that guy is, because they'll ask you for tickets or something. It was part of my life, and I'm very proud, and I'm very proud of all the people that worked with us on it. And there's so many, literally at the end of the day, the thing that's amazing is you may have as many as 10,000 people reported to you in some way, shape, or form. So it's a massive undertaking, but it's a heck of a model for business. It's got everything you ever think you've got in the business and then some.
Yeah, it has been an extraordinary experience to so many of us around the world. So we really appreciate you, and we wish you all the best.
Well, somebody asked me what my goal in life was, is create memories for people. And hopefully we did that.
If you enjoy this podcast, please make sure to subscribe. And to stay updated on everything that the Action Catalyst is up to, make sure to follow us on Facebook and Instagram at Action Catalyst Podcast and on Twitter at Catalyst_Action. And thanks for listening.